Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. I'm Tom, and today we are going to be wrapping up the first quarter of the year, which is really hard to believe. This first quarter of the year has felt like an eternity and also like no time at all for me, which is a really interesting mix of things. But today we're going to be going over how my reading has been going, some highlights from the year so far, and some goals and how things are going to be continue as we move on into the year. And so far this year, I have finished 14 books, which is about 5,000 pages, and that puts me a little bit ahead of schedule. My goal for this year, books-wise, was to only get to 40 books. I planned on reading some like really long, massive books this year, so I bumped that number down. And to be honest, I don't really care how many books I read in a year. I really care about what I'm reading, and so I really wanted to make sure I hit quality over quantity. And that being said, I want to talk about, to start with, my favorite books so far from this year. And the first one is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kilwer. This is a book I read very early on. I believe I read this in January, and this is like a psychological horror mystery thriller home story, and it worked for me in ways that I don't think a lot of books would. I don't know if that means my tastes are changing a little bit when it comes to my reading, because this ending is not normally something I would like, and I don't really want to say too much other than that because I don't want to lead people thinking one thing or another. But this is a book I have raved about here on the channel, and this is my first 5-star book that I had in like 6 months or something like that. So like, I love this book. I adore it. It is a top like 15 book all time for me, and I have gotten a lot of people to read it. Some people in my life have enjoyed it more than others, and that is actually exactly what I expected from this book. It's not one that I think everybody is going to connect with in the same way that I did. I think if you're somebody who really likes some very specific things in a story, and I'm being vague for specific reasons, it's just not going to be a story that worked for you. But one thing that I can say is almost every single person I have read it has told me that this book is actually horrifying and that it has actually scared them. So if you're looking for a book that gives you the heebie-jeebies, creeps you out, makes you wonder what you just saw out of the corner of your eye, I absolutely recommend We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kilwer. It is just absolutely a fantastic read, and one that I will continue championing throughout the year. I'm sure I won't stop talking about it because that's just how much I have enjoyed it. In the second place spot is a book that I just recently finished. So we started the quarter off strongly and we finished it off pretty strongly, and that is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. And this is the story of a young woman who we kind of get introduced to in a very interesting setting. She is trapped in an underground bunker, basically, in a cell with 40 other women. No one knows how they've gotten there. Nobody knows where they are, and they are just under guard 24/7. They're completely provided for. All of their food is there. They have water, bathrooms, everything that they really need to survive, they have. But for whatever reason, they are trapped there and they don't know why. And the story progresses a lot from there, but that is kind of the opening premise. And I don't want to tell you too much more because I think part of what makes this book work is the exploration with the characters that we go on. And it was just a book that, even though it is coming from a female perspective, which is an element I really liked about this book, it is still a character that I felt like I related to in a lot of different ways, which was an interesting experience for me because it is definitely coming from a very female perspective. And that, like I said, something I liked about it, but you don't always expect yourself to relate to a character when it's coming from like the completely opposite point of view from yourself. But it is something that happened for me. And once again, this is not a book that I think will work for everybody, specifically because of the ending. Yet again, a similar theme with the two books that I have mentioned already. But because this is such a short book, it is something that I think I recommend to most people because it's not like a huge time sink. I have a much harder time recommending books that are, 700 pages versus something that was significantly shorter that you can get through in a couple of days, like 3 days probably if you're an average reader. And so it makes it a lot easier for me to recommend. And so that is something that I definitely would recommend to most people. It's a different kind of post-apocalyptic story. It's very different than a lot of the other ones that I have read. And a lot of that does have to do with the point of view, but once again, it is definitely worth reading. And then my third favorite book so far from this quarter is The Blackest Heart by Brian Lee Durfee, book 2 of the 5 Warrior Angels trilogy. This is a grim, dark story, Game of Thrones-esque story, honestly, but it also has a great thing that I like about it, that it has elements of a thriller in it. And I don't know if it's because Brian Lee Durfee in videos has talked about he is a big fan of things like the Da Vinci Code and some of these other like thrillers. And I don't know if that is an influence in his writing itself subconsciously, or if it just happened, or if that's kind of how he wanted to tell the story. But for somebody like me who also enjoys some of these mystery thriller elements inside of this fantasy world, it just ticks a lot of boxes for me. Like I said, it is an epic world. You have all this kind of political conflict going on. You have epic battles. Like the Blackest Heart has probably the best battle, the most epic, cool battle that I have ever read in it. It is absolutely a battle that I will never forget, and I would love to see it like animated, on a screen, because I think it is just brilliantly brutal. And I think that is something I can say about the series as a whole, is brilliantly brutal. Like if somebody asked me for like a blurb of this series, that is what I would say for it. So that is definitely, my selling pitch for this series. And it is a completed trilogy. So like I know a lot of people care about that for whatever reason. All 3 books are out. You can read it all and they're all great. You can also check out, he has a YouTube channel. You can check his YouTube channel out as well. So far we have talked about the positives. Now let's go ahead and just talk about some books that have not worked for me as much in this quarter. And my least favorite thing that I have read this year, and this is kind of a cop-out, it should barely count, but it is The Wood at Midwinter by Susanna Clarke. This technically started out like its original conception was like a radio broadcast or something, and then they took it and put it into a book. It is very whimsical, it's fairy tale-esque, but there's just something about it that's missing. This is something that takes no time to read. Like if you look, it has like art on all of the pages. Half the pages don't even have full words on them. Here's another great example of that. But it's just a story that you can sit down and read in like 45 minutes, probably, like nothing at all. But I just didn't feel connected to anything of it. And yeah, it was an author who I was already kind of skeptical about, because not skeptical is not the right word, but when I hear people talk about Piranesi and Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, it's just not a story that I think is going to work for me and resonate with me. And I have yet to have anybody pitch me either of those books in a convincing enough way to get me to try them. So this is my challenge to anybody who loves those books. Give me a good enough pitch and maybe I'll pick one of them up and give it a chance. Probably Piranesi over the other one, because I think Piranesi is significantly shorter. But yeah, so it just didn't work. And to be honest, I don't think it was really a fair thing to put this into a little book like this and try to sell it and expect me to like absolutely love it. I'm sure there's somebody out there who like super connects with it, and the whimsical fairy tale part of it works for them, but unfortunately for me that is not the case. And then my second least favorite thing that I have read so far this year, and for my Malazan fans, I'm very sorry, but that is House of Chains by Steven Erikson. But House of Chains has been, Malazan in general, has been an interesting experience for me, because even though, and I talked about this a little bit already, even though House of Chains itself wasn't like this fantastic reading experience for me, the discussion around House of Chains that I went and listened to after the fact, or have had here and there with some people, has been awesome. And I think I've just gotten to the point where I've realized that I think I enjoy talking about Malazan once I'm done reading the books significantly more than the actual act of reading itself, which is just a unique experience that I have never had before with any series whatsoever. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't enjoyed some of the books. Like, I really enjoyed Guardians of the Moon and Memories of Ice in particular. Those 2 books I thought were fantastic. I think they were both books of the month for me in the months that I read them over the course of the past year or so. But yeah, Malazan just in general, House of Chains was just so, I don't know. I have a review coming for it soon where I have more of my thoughts kind of planned out in a better way. I kind of go through the characters and some things that worked for me and didn't work for me. And I don't know, I think I said in my last monthly wrap up that I feel like I have Stockholm Syndrome a little bit with the series, where I have like a rough time with the books individually, but then I'm done and I'm like, whew, man, that is kind of brilliant though, right? And so once again, super unique experience for my Malazan fans. You guys have been actually super awesome and super encouraging with some of the stuff you have said in the comments, and I've really appreciated that from all of you guys. And it does make me want to continue reading, and we'll get to that when I get to my goals here in a little bit, but that is something I do plan on doing here in the next quarter. Then one last thing I wanted to mention here, and like my favorites from some stuff that I have read over this past quarter, is my favorite character. Characters are obviously super important to stories. I know I'm not necessarily a character reader, but when I read a character that I absolutely love, I felt like this was a great opportunity to talk about it. And that would be Lysier from The Wars of Light and Shadow, specifically here in The Fugitive Prince by Janny Wurts. And people who have read the series might be confused, because Lysier is not doing things that make him a great person here in this book. But for whatever reason, I just feel for him so much. I'm super connected to him, and not just him, all the characters. I mean, this is just great character work in this series as a whole, and I just feel super like close, and like I understand a lot of these characters. But there's just something when I'm reading about Lysier that it just works so well for me, even though like what he's doing is objectively awful. And I'm down to say that, yes, what he's doing in his book is objectively awful. But there's just something about it that like, I don't need to like the character for them to be my favorite, or for them to be like the best character that I'm reading at the time. But I just find him to be a super compelling character and have just had a blast reading him in that book and that series in general. I've always felt like he was my favorite. I think a lot of people, as the series goes on, I feel like I hear a lot of Arathon being their favorite, but he is probably my favorite Lysair. So maybe I'm one of the few who is on that side of the coin, but I did just want to mention him as my favorite characters. Now let's go ahead and talk about some random highlights that we had over this past quarter. Hopefully I'm not forgetting anything, but I probably am, because that's just what I do. I have been in a bunch of live discussions and or like pre-recorded discussions, and they have all been awesome. So Chris over at the Bearded Book Beast, that great discussion. Same thing with Jake over at Nerd Level Rising. Also, I was on Dear Dr. Fantasy, episode 69, which was fantastic. Kind of a little bit of a dream come true there. I was on, I'm going to call it Tea with Tom with Noelle. That's what she titled her video. That was an awesome discussion. I've also been a part of some awesome collabs, and this is where I definitely think I'm forgetting some that I was in, but I got invited to be in a video where we recommended standalones, and that was over at Fun Fantasy Books with Issa. And then I have been in a couple different ones for Preacher over at Preacher Reads. And anytime I get that opportunity to, talk with anybody else in the community or be a part of, videos that they're putting together, I'm always honored that I'm included in those kinds of things, or people find me interesting enough to want to talk to and, have discussions about and all that stuff. It's definitely humbling, and I'm always so honored anytime somebody, reaches out to me. This is a good opportunity to plug the Discord. A couple of those people are members of the Discord. We kind of are like in a shared server. So I think there's 7 or 8 of us in total. And so, it's a kind of a one-stop shop for a bunch of different people. I highly, recommend that you come and join and hang out. You can talk to me. I have a channel in there, and you can, talk to me directly. I try to be in there as much as I can be, though I am sometimes very bad at the social media and stuff. So, but that is a recommendation if you want to chat with me a little bit more. Obviously, the comments are always great, but I think it's a lot easier to kind of have a back and forth in Discord compared to the comments, because YouTube's really bad about notifying you when people reply to your comments after the fact. So those are just a few things that I have done in other places. And then just a couple of things that I personally really enjoyed over this past quarter was one, my 2-year anniversary live stream on BookTube. First live stream that I have done personally on my channel. And, I'm not probably somebody who's going to be doing a whole lot of live streaming in general, but it was just an awesome experience. Had a lot of support. A lot of people come out, and just wanted to, say thank you once again to everybody who came out and made sure I wasn't just sitting there by myself for a couple of hours. My Fourth Wing video, that is just a video that I had so much fun doing. Part of it was, I read it with my girlfriend. We did the video together, and we just had, fun spoiler-filled discussion and everything about Fourth Wing. And I know Fourth Wing isn't like the pinnacle of literature or the greatest book ever written, but like it's fun in like a not serious way, and like a summer blockbuster that you don't really care about too much, but like you went and hung out with your friends in the movie theater and had a good time. Like that is how I feel about Fourth Wing overall. And so that was a super fun video. The weekly update I did outside has been a highlight of this quarter. I don't know why that one sticks in my mind so much. Maybe it's because I got to do a couple of my favorite things together. I rode my motorcycle out somewhere and then recorded a video, and I don't know, it was just a lot of fun, and that is one that sticks with me for. And then something else that I did in this quarter that I really liked was my tier ranking of the Cosmere. I know that after Wind and Truth, there's been a lot of up and down with the Cosmere, and it's been a little bit of a mess, I think, for some people. But for me, I still really love the Cosmere. It would be super high up if like I did a Cosmere ranking, like if I included everything, it would be high up on a list. But it was fun to rank it. And I'm sure if I went and looked at my ranking right now that I did in that video, there would probably be some changes I would make, which is always kind of fun especially when you're ranking something that's 30 something books or something like that. I think that is always a lot of fun. So now let's go ahead and do some check-ins on my goals and see if I'm adjusting anything or goals for the next quarter. So one goal that I had was, this is technically a year one, so it doesn't really matter too much, but it's to fit a nonfiction in here somewhere. I haven't done that yet. I still haven't really found one that I want to read. Normally, if I'm going to find a nonfiction, it's going to have to be something that I want to read pretty specifically. And this is an interesting one. I have the goal of being less adventurous with my reading. Last year, I took a lot of chances and experimented a whole lot with what I was reading and everything. And so one of my goals was to do that a little bit less, to kind of come back home and read things that I knew I was going to really enjoy. And funny enough, I don't think I have done like the best job of that. A couple examples of that would be stuff like I read The Maltese Falcon, which is like a super famous movie that I decided to read, or Call for the Dead. This was another book that I thought I might like, but in all reality, it was me taking a chance on something to kind of fill the void that James Bond has left me after I finished reading all the Ian Fleming ones. And I just feel like I've taken some risks here and there. I guess Fourth Wing would also fit into there as well. But yeah, so I guess I can count that goal as a failure, but that's not like, that's just a weird goal in general. And so I'm still trying to read some of the big stuff that are things that I think I'm going to like more, but you know, it is here and there. Another goal I had was to start Sun Eater this year, and I have yet to do that, but I'm going to chop that up and say this next quarter is the quarter I'm going to start Sun Eater. It's just gotten to the point where I have owned these books since before the third book came out. I could have been like an OG Sun Eater person and have been like up to date with it from the like super early on in the series. And for whatever reason, I was like, I know I'm going to love it, so I just haven't read it. And I did the same thing with like the Cosmere. I did the same thing with Wheel of Time. I don't know. I do this thing where I push off series that I know I'm going to love until I'm like absolutely ready for it. And I am getting super anxious to get to Sun Eater now, especially with the last book coming out soon. I just feel like I need to get into it finally. So this next quarter is definitely, that's going to be a goal, is to absolutely get to Sun Eater. Another goal I had was to be more consistent with my manga reading. And this is, I think, a goal that needs to be adjusted slightly. So to start with, no, I have not been anywhere near consistent with reading manga. And I think that's just something I'm going to accept totally as a personal thing for me, where I'm not always going to be in the mood to read manga. It's going to be something where I'm super streaky with it. Because when I get into the mood to read it, I read like 50 chapters at a time or something ridiculous. You know, I read like an extended amount of it all at once. And I just need to accept that trying to consistently read like 5 chapters a week or something isn't how I like to do it. I like to sit down and read it all, or read a big bunch of it. And so that's just one of those goals that I think I'm never going to be consistent with it, and that's okay. But to continue to read manga is definitely something I think I can keep doing. Another goal I had was to do a live stream. Did that. That was awesome. One goal that I did have, which I've been showing them here and there, but that was to make covers for all the books that I don't own. So that's why I have all these like super silly covers of books, you know, like I'm not an artist or anything, but I do just want to point out, this is probably my favorite one that I've done. Edge of Tomorrow is definitely up there. Starship Trooper, I think that one's funny, but like I just come up with something silly, makes me laugh. But I do think it is something that is unique to my channel, and you know, I don't know. I think it's funny. I don't know if other people do. I have gotten people who have enjoyed the covers with me, but it's just kind of like a silly joke that I started as. But I actually think it's a really nice thing to have. And one thing that I'm going to add to this goal is I do want to start, you know, instead of just drawing the cover on it, I would like to take some notes after I finish the book and kind of keep it with the book. I think it might be a nice way to like go in between like Goodreads and like journaling, like a nice middle ground of where, you know, I have my fun, silly cover, but then I have some like notes on it, how I felt about it after I finished it. And, you know, that would be a nice way for me to be able to quickly look at what I thought about a book after the fact. And I don't know, I think that might be a good way to improve what I'm doing with it, but really it is just for laughs. And I do quite enjoy my silly little covers. If you have watched a lot of my videos, definitely let me know if you have a favorite. If you can remember any of the ones that I've done, I would like to hear your favorites. And the last goal that I had was to make progress on my 2 long series. And technically I have done that. I'm almost done with this. I'm so close to being done with this, which would be a book checked off for that. But then I did finish House of Chains. So that is progress. And I'm going to say for the next quarter, I would like to finish 1 more book in each of those series. I think that's pretty reasonable. So that would be Midnight Tides. And actually, okay, and then it's Grand Conspiracy for the next Wars of Light and Shadow book. I had to double check is back there. So that's going to be kind of my game plan there. I read these super slowly, more slowly than Malazan because I'm physically reading it and I'm holding it upside down. But I read these normally when I physically read. I read right before bed. You've heard me say it if you've been here multiple times, but I end up reading like 3 pages and falling asleep. And that is not conducive to reading a long series quickly. And that's okay. I think these are books that you can definitely take a long time with and enjoy the slow burn of them. But I would like to maybe up that pace. So I have said it before, I need to figure out a new way how to read physically. And then one last thing I did want to bring up is I still don't really know how I feel about weekly updates. I think I both really like them and really dislike them because they feel like cheap videos that I'm putting out that don't always bring a lot of value. But then again, at the same time, I feel like it's a more personal kind of video that I do that lets you in on what I'm doing and those kinds of things. So I both love them and hate them, and I don't know how I feel about them in general. I'm going to continue doing them for right now, but there might be a point where maybe I don't know. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about the weekly updates. Personally, I'm like on the fence on it, but I do think it's good overall. because I think if I do just regular videos, it's not, there's not that personal connection, which is a weird thing. Like the parasocial, if you go watch the Tea with Tom with Noel, I think we talked about that when we were still recording, of that like parasocial relationship that we end up forming between people, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And so like I like to be personable and feel like you know me, at least in my reading perspective, right? And so I don't know. I think the weekly updates are kind of like that good middle ground there, where you get to know me a little bit and we can talk and all of those things. But like I said, if you do want to talk more, join the Discord. But that is pretty much all. I think overall, this first quarter, I'd give an A+. It's been great. So we'll see. Hopefully the next quarter can be just as good. If I could get another 5-star, that'd be awesome. Like I said, I went 6 months between my last one and We Used to Live Here. So definitely let me know how your reading is going so far this quarter. If you have found new favorites, if you have found books that you absolutely despise, I'd love to hear that just as much as your favorites. And hit me up on the Discord. It would be a good time to see you there. But that's all for me. And remember, read what you want when you want.